Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Thomas Mascia. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Thomas Mascia was born in the 1990s and lived on Long Island, New York. He resided in a 1,700 square foot house on Gruber Court in West Hempstead, along with his father, Thomas Sr., and his mother, Dorothy. West Hempstead is 26 miles east of Manhattan. His father, Thomas Sr., used to be an officer with the NYPD. In 1993, Thomas Sr. pleaded guilty to cocaine distribution based on an incident that occurred in 1992. He was among 3 officers who purchased more than 4 ounces of cocaine in Brooklyn with the intent of selling it on Long Island. This meant that Thomas Sr. was a convicted felon. His father's negative experience as an officer did not discourage Thomas from pursuing a career in law enforcement. In 2019, he joined the New York State Police. After 28 weeks of training, Thomas started working as a road patrol trooper. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On October 30, 2024, Thomas Mascia was working out of Police Troop L. It was his first time on patrol for this particular troop. His shift was scheduled to run from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. At 11:41 p.m., Thomas used his radio for an emergency transmission. He said shots fired and indicated that he had been shot by the driver of a black Dodge Charger on the Southern State Parkway. The driver was a black or dark-skinned Hispanic male. Another trooper arrived at the scene and transported Thomas to a hospital. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. Thomas Mascia had sustained a single, non-fatal gunshot wound to the right leg. The firearm used was chambered in .22 long rifle. He said that he had been driving westbound on the Southern State Parkway near Hempstead Avenue, which is exit 17. Thomas noticed a black Dodge Charger in the median. He pulled up behind the Charger with the intent of offering assistance to the driver. Thomas exited his police cruiser and started walking toward the Charger when he heard several pops. The Charger drove away, headed west, and Thomas realized he had been shot in the right leg. Thomas indicated that the Charger had matte gray dual exhaust tips and a temporary New Jersey license plate. He even supplied officers with the license plate number. The police launched a massive manhunt for the alleged shooter, but they never found the mysterious Dodge Charger. At the scene of the alleged shooting on the Southern State Parkway, investigators recovered 9 spent .22 caliber cases, but not a single bullet. The only bullet recovered was from Thomas's right leg. No tire marks were found in the median consistent with a vehicle accelerating rapidly, which seemed unusual. The police examined surveillance cameras which monitored nearby roads, but none of them captured a vehicle matching Thomas's description. It was like the Dodge Charger just disappeared into thin air, or it never existed in the first place. Thomas's body camera had not been active during the incident. It had been recording at other various times during that night, but it appeared as though Thomas had tried to cover the lens. The body camera was programmed to record when all the emergency lights on the police cruiser were active. However, Thomas had only activated his rear emergency lights. This did not trigger the camera. Investigators examined data from cell phones, GPS, and license plate readers, and realized these data did not match the story Thomas was telling. What he was saying simply did not add up. Investigators wondered if Thomas had staged the shooting. Maybe he was the mysterious perpetrator they were looking for. In November 2024, the police conducted an extensive search of the house where Thomas lived with his parents. Here's what they found. Almost $800,000 in cash, a Smith & Wesson semi-automatic rifle with illegal modifications, this rifle was unrelated to the shooting, and a .22 caliber rifle which matched the weapon used to shoot Thomas. The police described this rifle as a dismantled ghost gun. Investigators developed a theory of the crime. Here's what they think happened. On the night of October 30, 2024, Thomas Mascia left 9 spent .22 caliber cases on the Southern State Parkway near exit 17. He drove to nearby Hempstead Lake State Park, which is at exit 18. Using a .22 caliber rifle, Thomas shot himself one time in the right leg. After this, he drove about 2 miles north to his parents' home on Gruber Court in West Hempstead and hid the weapon. Thomas made his way back to the Southern State Parkway and made the radio call for help. On January 27, 2025, Thomas Mascia was charged with a felony charge of tampering with physical evidence and misdemeanor charges of filing a false report and official misconduct. He is facing up to 3 years in prison if convicted. His parents, Thomas Sr. and Dorothy, were charged with criminal possession of a firearm, which is a felony. I think this was based on the Smith & Wesson rifle being found in their house. In addition to the illegal modification part, Thomas Sr. was a convicted felon and not permitted to possess a firearm. At the time I'm making this video, Thomas and his parents are working their way through the legal system, and there has been no final disposition in the case. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Prior to Thomas being arrested, he had been disciplined 3 times with the New York State Police. All 3 incidents involved reckless driving. In 2020, Thomas rammed his patrol vehicle into a car while attempting to reach another officer who was in need of assistance. In 2021, he collided with a vehicle while responding to an emergency call. And in November 2021, he hit a deer while responding to a report of a domestic dispute. 3 incidents involving reckless driving in 2 years probably warrants a police officer losing their job, but it is important to keep in mind that Thomas worked on Long Island. A history of 3 reckless driving incidents probably ranked him as one of the better drivers in that area. The drivers there are so bad, there's the sense that reckless driving is required to get a license in the first place. Other than the driving problems, there were no red flags warning that Thomas could be problematic. Apparently, he was able to get through the mental health screening without any difficulty. This brings me to item number 2. An attorney representing Thomas indicated that Thomas had been suffering for years with unseen and untreated mental health issues. He went on to suggest that Thomas was permitted to stay in his job as a trooper without receiving any mental health treatment. The attorney indicated that the shooting on October 30, 2024 was not the first time that Thomas harmed himself while on duty. He didn't specifically refer to an incident. However, the attorney may have been talking about something that happened in 2022. Thomas reported that he was injured by a hit-and-run driver, but the claim was never substantiated. Maybe his failure to make an impression with that claim led Thomas to the shooting, like he was going to get everyone's attention one way or the other. Item number 3. How did Thomas manage to become a police officer when he purportedly had mental health symptoms? Normally, law enforcement agencies have contracts with licensed psychotherapists who conduct evaluations. These are usually doctoral-level therapists who have a good deal of experience specifically with assessment. There are many different mental health symptoms which can make it difficult for a police officer to function appropriately, but one of the major concerns is personality pathology. This is what clinicians are mostly looking for when they assess a law enforcement applicant. There's a lot of variability between therapists as far as how they detect personality pathology, like the methods that they use. Some put a lot of weight on the ability to detect extreme personality traits through an extensive interview, like talking to the applicant for a few hours and asking a lot of questions. Other clinicians rely more on psychometric testing, like using the MMPI, hoping that testing will uncover any personality pathology. Unfortunately, psychotherapy techniques are not necessarily useful for detecting extreme personality traits in the short run. For instance, individuals who are antisocial or narcissistic usually do fairly well at manipulating people. They can be very polite, respectful, articulate, and attentive. Even when provoked, an applicant like this could continue to offer appropriate responses to a clinician. Superficial charm is particularly common, specifically with narcissism. If a therapist was able to spend a few weeks with an applicant, the clinician would probably gain the upper hand and realize what was going on. But no law enforcement agency is going to pay for that service. That would be pretty expensive. Detecting deception is another challenging area for clinicians, especially in the short run. I've talked about this many times in other videos, usually in the context of a criminal who is being evaluated by a mental health professional, like a defendant who's facing serious charges. There is no physiological response pattern associated with deception, which is why so-called lie detector tests don't work. Clinicians have no special ability to uncover lies either. If an applicant is intent on deceiving a therapist, they can probably get away with it. Item number 4. One day after Thomas staged the shooting, he was released from the Nassau University Medical Center where he had undergone surgery. Dozens of supporters were there to greet Thomas as he exited the building. They treated him like a hero. In their minds, Thomas had demonstrated incredible courage in the face of a deadly adversary. It was like they were saying all police officers should emulate Thomas. He represented the pinnacle of the profession. Now, one could argue that the other officers were just trying to be polite and encouraging, but throwing a celebration was a bad idea nonetheless. There was never any evidence supporting Thomas's claim that he had been shot by a mysterious motorist. This amazing celebration was based solely on his word. I guess the lesson here is to follow the evidence. Don't hold celebrations for an officer without knowing all the facts. Police officers can be deceptive. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. Just like there should not be a rush to judgment on the side of condemnation, nobody should be in a hurry to congratulate. Moving to my last item, number 5, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Many ideas have been introduced to explain what motivated Thomas. For example, he was looking for sympathy, he thought this stunt would lead to a promotion with the police, or maybe he was trying to impress a romantic interest who was not acknowledging him, like being a hero would make him more desirable. Regardless of his exact goal, it appears as though gaining attention was part of his plan. It's possible that Thomas was a victim narcissist. Narcissism can be divided into 2 categories, grandiose and vulnerable. Grandiose narcissism is characterized by boldness, arrogance, self-confidence, resistance to criticism, externalized anger, and optimism. Whereas vulnerable narcissism is characterized by resentfulness, distrust, insecurity, social awkwardness, internalized anger, and pessimism. Grandiose narcissism is straightforward and obvious. A grandiose narcissist believes they are superior, and they want everyone to agree with them on this point. They never doubt their own greatness. The vulnerable narcissist, however, is full of self-doubt. They are not confident about their greatness and require excessive admiration to maintain their own belief about being superior. Sometimes a vulnerable narcissist will play the victim as part of a manipulation tactic to gain attention. When this happens, they are referred to as a victim narcissist. Essentially, this is a version of a vulnerable narcissist. Often when people try to gain attention, they use a method like doing something pro-social or productive. But the victim narcissist is not that selective. They are fine trying to get attention by playing the victim. To them, being a victim is somehow a high-status position, worthy of admiration. It is an amazing achievement. When the victim narcissist launches a hoax to play the victim, they are turning to the world and saying, "Stop ignoring me. I am really quite amazing. Pay attention to what I'm doing. Realize my greatness." Ultimately, the same personality traits which lead to the hoax interfere with its chances of success. Victim narcissists often have low conscientiousness and high neuroticism. They are impulsive, irresponsible, and emotionally reactive. Their schemes are unsophisticated, poorly planned, and usually destined to fail. Even in the rare instance when they can get away with a hoax, the victim narcissist will never feel satisfied. They are trapped by their own lack of insight, unable to understand why they feel so much pain. Those are my thoughts on the case of Thomas Mascia. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.